Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Streamlining Manufacturing Processes, Addressing Pain Points for Efficiency and Compliance. My name is John Rio. I'm Director of Sales with Kwixand Solutions, and I have with me my colleague Peter Paquette. But first, a little bit about Kwixand Solutions. We're a Microsoft partner we specialize in Dynamics applications such as ERP or enterprise resource planning applications like Business Central and Finance and Operations. We also offer support for dynamic sales and customer service. Our typical customers are manufacturers and service companies, as well as distributors. And some of our customers do more than one thing, of course. Like many of you, probably you might manufacture and also offer service after the fact for your products, and also do some of your own distribution or use distributors yourselves. We offer fixed fee implementations, which set us apart from many other partners. And we also have great customer care plans for after go live to make sure you're taken care of, everyone's trained and up to speed on the solution. And you can rest easy with those plans, as well as knowing that we have a great service guarantee. I'll be happy to talk to you about that. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Peter Paquette, who's an implementation specialist and our supply chain expert here at Kwixand. He has many years of experience in supply chain as a supply chain planning person, and also with implementing enterprise resource planning for manufacturers, distributors, etc. On that, take it away, Peter.
Thanks a lot, John, for the introduction. My name is Peter Paquette, and my expertise is largely in supply chain management. And this is the perspective from which I usually speak. I'm a certified supply chain professional with over 30 years of supply chain experience in all areas of supply chain. My interaction with every area of business gives me insight to the needs of internal and external partners based on what I've been asked to provide for them. Since we're talking to small and medium-sized businesses today, and Kwixand's focus is with Microsoft Dynamics products, there may be mention of how Business Central supports the topics in this discussion. So let's start in the middle where most supply chain managers are. This is just a brief agenda of the topics that we'll touch on. We're going to focus on things like digital transformation. We're going to talk about effective production and assembly. And we're going to talk about how to leverage your ERP to make informed decisions. And there's a couple of other topics that sort of relate to each of those major pain points. And we'll address those as we go through this process. So first, speaking about digital transformation, the big question that a small and medium-sized business needs to ask is, are you prepared to transform? Has your business or company changed in the past few years in such a way that you're starting to think about moving on from an insufficient or outdated ERP system that you have? Even small and medium-sized businesses have so many data input points that it's virtually impossible to keep track of them all. Tracking down or tracing transaction errors can almost be impossible. And this limits the integrity of your database. When you're trying to make decisions, do you really want to be making decisions on limited or partial information? Right? These are questions that really start the thought process of digital transformation. So recording your transactions in production, purchasing, finances, sales, transfers, and other sort of transactions provide the base of information you need to analyze your business. When you do a SWOT analysis and you look at the results of that, many small and medium-sized businesses will find that their greatest strength is, unfortunately, in people's ability of recall. Many transactions rely on manual input, and remembering how that was done last time becomes a factor. And this also provides for potentially the greatest weakness. What happens when that person leaves or retires, or the traditional scenario of they leave work one day and they buy the winning lottery ticket and they just never come back. So in some cases, companies are not aware of all the steps that are required to record transactions, or how much it costs to perform a simple transaction. So take a sales order, for instance. It costs about $35 just to produce a sales order header, and about $4 to $5 a line. And it's the same for production orders or purchase orders. So if you apply Pareto's law, most of the transactions, about 80% of them, are processed the same way every time with the same cost. But then about 15% of those, additionally 15% of the transactions are processed with some form of manual manipulation that requires extra effort, extra clicks, extra information. And then there's the outliers, the few transactions that are processed almost entirely manually. They're entered into an ERP, things like item journals, and my favorite, the miscellaneous sale to the miscellaneous customer of the miscellaneous product. And there's no way that you can keep track of a miscellaneous category. You may not want to, but there's no way to do that. So what do you hope to gain from digital transformation? What are you willing to change in your current process? What are you willing to look at in your SOPs that just doesn't work? What are you not willing to change, or what are you not able to change? In some cases with companies or in certain industries, there's very particular requirements or transaction steps that must be taken. And those have to be taken into account when you're defining your must-haves and your wants for a new ERP. When you look at your standard operating protocols or your SOPs, can you or have you been able to standardize any of your SOPs to create flow? Some SOPs are required by your current ERP. And looking at any new sort of product like Business Central, you might be able to change some of your SOPs to actually make them easier or clearer to go from beginning to end. Keeping in mind, of course, that a one-off SOP is not a standard. It's a custom, right? It's a custom fit, and you need to make sure you identify these things. This is that miscellaneous transaction that I was talking about earlier. What about things like customer-specific SOPs? Is there a better way to conduct that transaction for that customer, that group of customers that requires certain information or for certain things to be done a particular way? And is the cost of performing the transaction that way, is it justified? Are you recouping that cost? Some older manual ERPs allow for these kinds of transactions, and that's what made them viable, right? The older ERPs had a lot of manual finagling inside that during a transaction, you could do things manually. And this goes back to the recall. How did we do this last time? And who performs that transaction? Or every time that salesperson or that data input is put into for that customer, it has to be done this particular way. And that's when you go to written SOPs and pull out binders and things like that. Now, newer ERPs may require some customization to complete these transactions. And so with digital transformation, you need to consider whether that's cost effective. But if you standardize your SOPs, you actually may require less customization from a new ERP. Now in Business Central, these are called extensions. What they refer to is an extension to the standard functionality. One thing that I always ask is it better to employ extensions where more is required, or is it better to try to tailor your SOPs to the standard functionality? So things like, say, production orders. A company has multiple types of production that requirements for each type require specific details and information for inputs and outputs. The standard production order may not be sufficient, so an extension can be deployed so that for each type to reflect the needs of processing the details for each type of production order. So not out of the box, but Kwixand solutions can help provide that extension within Business Central. So you think of also production and quality recording. A company requires a unique method of recording finished units and attaching quality records, which must be available through the sales process and beyond. So an extension can be deployed to allow for multiple individual consumption and output records, but function similarly to the standard function from the user input. So this is a background extension. Things that are going on in the background are not necessarily changing how information is being input into the ERP. Now, many companies look to spend money to customize ERP, to fix what really isn't broken, which brings up concerns about the cost of implementing a new ERP. So, should you spend some money and time standardizing your SOPs? Should you invest resources in training your operators and workers? And look at investing in maybe some new machines or equipment. Looking for that longer term solution. Now, the best time to change your SOPs is when you're implementing a new ERP. Everyone can be involved as part of the discovery process. Figure out what you do, when you do it. What are the deviations from SOP? What are the costs of working outside your SOP? And are there benefits? Customize to automate a strong working manual process. Okay? It never pays to automate a broken process. Our customizations may provide the result needed, but the method may be different from what you're doing right now. ERP automation can also means removing some of the manual input and means of circumventing the system. Now, that can seem a little restrictive at first, but ultimately it provides better data integrity and traceability throughout the process, and it reduces input errors. So let's talk a little bit about some things that happen in ERP that you may require. Do you need to track each item you produce individually or in groups? So what I mean is, do you have like serial numbers or lot numbers that you have to assign to items or groups of items? How manual is that record keeping right now? And what about, creating those records just in the first place? Are you able to search for and find this information in your current process after you've assigned those serial numbers or lot numbers? So with item serialization, you can create unique serial number records for each output item when it's which it'll be searchable within the ERP, and then it will enable you to trace the historic records posted to that item. Serialization can be automated or manual through standard functionality in Business Central. And customization can provide means for how and when serial numbers are assigned during the process, and even the serial number format if there's a specific requirement in your company or your industry. Raw materials that are transformed in production without really, adding other materials. So you think of things like big rolls of paper that are being cut into sheets. The paper itself doesn't change, but the item that is being produced changes. But there's a requirement to maintain the traceability and integrity of that product, the paper itself. There's a number of other different industries that we can refer to that are similar to that. Timber, steel, other metals, where the product that you're using as a raw material comes from the build of another sort of entity, and the makeup of that needs to be traced right through to the end of your finished product. Serial numbers can be automatically attached to documents and printed labels, and they will provide traceability to the original sale, to the original purchase, throughout production, and any subsequent transactions after the sale, such as for service orders or warranty issues. For instance, if you think about the automotive industry, each vehicle that is produced is assigned a VIN number, and that VIN number is traceable to that particular vehicle for the entire life of that vehicle. And if you go to your car lot, your auto dealership, they can punch up your VIN. They can see if there's any recalls on it. They can see if they can see your service history if they've been doing your service since you purchased the vehicle. So that's for an individual item. But what about groups of items? So if we talk about lot numbers, or in some cases, let's say for the metal industry or the steel industry, they're called heat numbers. Recording heat or lot numbers from vendors, for instance, I referred to just previously with the roll paper example, the raw material, the components, and production that's recorded in batches can be grouped with lot numbers or a similar form of lot numbers specific to an industry. So, like serial numbers, lot numbers can enable similar traceability to the original transactions and forward also to quality control and compliance documentation. So lot numbers, for instance, things like in computer chips or in the food industry, where everything is based on production. Your production is based on lot, right? So you're going to produce 30 computer chips, or you're going to produce 200,000 gallons of milk, or you're going to produce a bunch of smoked meat or something like that. Everything has lot traceability on it. And we hear about these kinds of recalls all the time in the news, and this is how they trace these things back. So item tracking can provide that traceability throughout the documentation flow in Business Central as the transactions are posted. So we have a sales quote that turns into a sales order, that turns into a posted sales shipment, that turns into a sales invoice, that turns into a posted sales invoice. And any traceability that is attached to the items on those documents will carry through the entire transaction. It also goes for purchasing, production, service, any of the modules that are available within Business Central. Quality control and compliance recording is as important. And extending on the topic of item tracking and traceability, maintaining records for quality control and compliance is very common in manufacturing. So, are you required to maintain traceable records of not only, say, finished goods, but also raw materials before they're transformed in your manufacturing process? There's a number of different ways this information gets input into an ERP. If you're running a production line where there's some automated machines that have different sort of connections, we can link in with the automated serial number assignment to your output. It will also help with recording your elapsed time for each unit, and any production errors that come in that are it's produced but it's considered scrap. We can automatically send these records to the ERP. And with quality control input at your workstation, we can link with your workstation with Business Central, so that your test method details can come up on the screen, and they can be recorded right there on the shop floor. And that traceability can be carried through each point of the production transformation process, wherever there's a workstation. Data will be available in almost real time. However quickly the input can be done at the workstation, it can be uploaded to Business Central, and will be available to add to compliance documents or test documents, or any kinds of certificates that you need to produce for customers, or for government regulations. And because it's being kept as part of the database, because your production order number, for instance, will be registered with that test certificate, it will be searchable and accessible in the future if you ever need to go back and find and prove, you have a certificate of analysis, or some sort of other certificate to prove that tests were done and what the results were, proving that everything was within compliance. Now, some industries require this information for government standards. Sometimes it's an industry standard, and in some companies it's it's an ISO standard. So when you do your annual audits, or your half-annual audits with your ISO auditor, they want to be able to just go and pull a certificate from any production order from anywhere, and you'll be able to produce that. And Business Central can keep those records tight for you. So let's talk about production. I mean, we're talking to small and medium-sized businesses in manufacturing, and really what it comes down to is information in your production and your assembly environment. So in manufacturing, production is the focus of most of the time and effort of available resources. And this is where the details need to be available for analysis of pretty much everything from quantity of material, time to produce, labor hours, time and inventory of finished goods, etc. Talking a little more about integration, as mentioned before, with some customization, information can be passed between the shop floor and Business Central very easily. Now, these transmissions can reduce input errors and production details on the shop floor, and when completing the production order process. So there's a few things there. When the shop floor is reporting information, if the machines are looking after the information, there's not going to be an error, or there's less chance anyway of being an error. But when the production is running, or when it's complete, somebody can at any point during that process, somebody can look into the system and see that, oh yes, my production order is going in this morning, and look, it's actually being produced. It's half done. It should be finished at about 12 o'clock or something like that. And Kwixand can help with some machine integrations. So automating that data transfer by linking Business Central with your operator stations via your PLC or your LCI, or some other technology that you might have. Now, production order details can be sent directly to the work center or the machine center from Business Central. And machine counts for inputs and times and outputs, they can be sent directly back to Business Central, back to the ERP. Now, we can also help so that these details are reviewed as part of compliance, let's say, before they're posted, so that if there are any adjustments or errors that need to be flushed out, these can be dealt with before documents get posted. Now, actual production is a result of many inputs used in the planning process. Demand from sales, demand forecasting, demand simply from company decisions to carry a certain amount of inventory, So, what are you going to carry and how much do you need to make? What's the velocity of your business? Planning is definitely required to decide the best course of action. Business Central can help you manage the what, the when, and the how much of what needs to be produced. Even the where for some companies with, say, multiple manufacturing locations or distribution points. Finished goods production comes in a few different forms. We'll talk a little bit about, make to stock, make to order. So make to stock, the company decides that they want to carry a certain amount of finished goods inventory to support their projected sales or a campaign maybe that they're going to promote in a month or 2 months. And then there's make to order. And now make to order, you want to be able to manage those not only to produce them, but you want to produce them at the right time, because you don't want to have inventory sitting there longer than you need to. And in Business Central, you can store information such as lead time and lead time for raw materials, lead time for how long it takes to produce something, and lead time even for how long it takes for a finished good when it's shipped to get from you to your end destination. And what about if you have to make components for your finished goods production? So in some cases, let's say with a computer, you're going to have to assemble some of the sub-assemblies before you can put the final computer together. You need to plan for that as well, because you don't want to decide that you want to make 50 computers and you only have 40 of this component in stock. You need to make sure that you're going to at least make the other 10. But you may be looking at 2 or 3 weeks down the road, or depends on how long it takes to make those components or when you get the raw materials for those. Business Central can provide some structure to help you manage and maintain things like your production bombs with updates, maintaining different versions, depending on how static or dynamic you need to be with your production bombs. And it can also help you to analyze whether is there some raw material items that you can standardize, or maybe some components, some subcomponents or subassemblies that you can standardize. So then, we go back to that computer scenario where you're not going to make the 10, you're going to make 200, because you're also going to use that item to make different finished goods computers. Business Central can help you calculate your total material requirement for each raw material derived from the demand placed on all the planned production for a chosen period. So when you take your demand, however you create that demand, whether it's through sales or company decisions of carrying inventory, the planning function in Business Central can help you plan right down to purchasing the raw material. So with your multi-level bills of material, and your subcomponents and your subassemblies, going right down to the actual purchase of raw material. And this will help you to negotiate, purchase and supply agreements with various vendors, and also to look out basically as far as you really need to or want to. Usually 3 to 6 months is about the outside from my experience in supply chain management. Before you don't want to get locked into a supply agreement that's not going to benefit you later on. But what about output capacity planning? So many ERPs will assume infinite capacity unless other details are provided. But do you know your own capacity? Are you running basically 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Now, we're not talking here about scheduling so much as just calculating how long it's going to take you to complete a series of production orders. So how long will the current and planned capacity last? If you take all your production orders that you have right now and you started, production order number 1, and then you went to 2 and 3 and 4 down the line, you started number 1 right now, how long would it take you to complete all your production orders? How long would it take you to complete number 3? Because you don't want to do number 4 next, you want to do number 7 next, right? So then you can at least talk intelligently about when you can be able to deliver or start producing at least that production order number 7. So visibility to upcoming production requirements will help you provide details to decide, maybe which batches can go together. Maybe production order number 2 and production order number 5 are virtually the same thing. Maybe there's just a little tweak in the machine so that you're going to reduce the changeover time. So reducing your changeover time means that your machine's running. Machines that are running make money. This visibility will also provide duration of production to determine the best time for things like planned shutdown, for maintenance, right, as opposed to unplanned downtime. So, it's always better to keep your machines running, but they can't run forever, and you need to be able to judge when is the best time for us to shut down this machine, or, to shift our crews around from one machine to another so that you can maintain the machine so that they don't shut down when you don't plan to. And what about those unplanned downtime costs? Obviously, repairing a machine costs money, but do you pay extra for repairs? You're bringing in technicians at overtime and double time and things like that. Do you have to fly people in on an emergency? What about your production backup? Do you have inventory to get you through that downtime? Sometimes that can create a loss of customer confidence. They're not happy if you phone them up and tell them, yeah, our machine went down. Great. How are you going to get me my product? Right. And then after the machine's back and up and running, everything's going, full tilt again. Now you're looking at overtime to catch up on the production. So there's a couple of other factors on capacity. In the planning cycle, you're going to have a finite amount of storage capacity storage for raw materials and components. So you can't just get a million pounds of something if you don't have room for that. You have to have a flow of your product. You also have a finite storage capacity for your finished goods. So you need to know that when your product is done, packaged, and palletized and ready to go, that it's going to get shipped out. That you're not carrying more inventory than you actually had planned for. As we all know, inventory is money. It doesn't cost money, it is money. Now, Business Central functionality can be configured, to include physical inventory storage spaces. There's warehouse functionality that is part of the standard functionality in Business Central, and it will help calculate your cost of inventory storage, and this can be pegged against this measurement to provide things like min-max details. And we'll talk a little bit more about things like production routing, like production bombs. There's the ability for updating your production routings and creating and maintaining different versions. And this will allow you to roll up the costs of the production, the act of production, throughout the entire process. It will be directly related to the resources used to perform the actions. Resources such as work centers or machine centers, or any of the items you might use a subcontract vendor for. So a couple of different planning worksheets. There's basically your master planning worksheet, your MPS, and that will be to take all the sales demand and company demand for inventory and create your production orders or your assembly orders if that's what you're using. And it will take the next step down to help create the suggested purchase orders for raw material, which it can aggregate your materials for a particular vendor or time period, or to meet your inventory purchase minimums. You can also use a requisition worksheet if you simply want to look at purchases. And they basically run the same way, except that the requisition worksheet doesn't look at doesn't create production orders or suggested production orders. It's only looking at the purchase process. And this, with all the input factors that we've discussed in the planning worksheets, calculating the best suggestions for your production output and your raw material purchases, it will provide some visibility to your upcoming production requirements. It will help you plan and create production orders for finished goods and components, and it will help you plan and create purchase orders for raw material and subcontracted goods. So how are you going to, from a management perspective, how are you going to best, leverage your ERP? Well, Business Central will provide for you one database for all the needed information. So you no longer need to export data to Excel to find ways to put different bits of information together. Business Central has some good standard reports and dashboards. And Business Central also connects very easily to Power Apps if you need, again, something that is, more than the standard functionality. Companies are accustomed to seeing reports in a specific format. That's how you've been looking at this information for years. But some of the detail is not available to you right now, and you need to add it, and that's why you're looking at getting bits of information from various sources, and some detail must be summarized manually now. So you're getting, in some cases, you're just getting a big block of data that you're having to go in and insert some equations or adding some summarizations or something like that, so that you can get basically a dashboard outlook. Your ERP, Business Central especially, will help create that document traceability we talked about a couple points back. So transactions that process and progress through various stages, they're all linked in Business Central. You can go to a posted sales invoice and link backward and find the original quote that you sent out to the customer, for instance. And these are all linked in, say, in purchases and other financial transactions as well. One other thing you can do in a sales order, for instance, on the screen you'll see that there's a little fact pane box, or fact box pane rather, on the side of the screen. And there's an area there where you can attach documents, and that will be available for you in the future. So for instance, on a sales order, you can attach a copy of the PDF purchase order that the customer sent to you. You can do the same thing in a purchase order with a purchase quote, or any sort of information, specific specs, information for a particular item that you might purchase. Of course, there's plethora of standard accounting and financial reports available in Business Central, and there's a lot of pages and lists. Now, pages and lists, all these things can be exported to Excel, and the reason I make that point is that sometimes you want to validate that information. From supply chain management perspective, one of the things that I always talk to people who are coming in and using Business Central for the first time, especially people working in purchasing and master planners that I have some background with, I will tell them that once you get everything into the system and you run your plan and you run your purchase suggestions, is export your list to Excel and then run the same equations that you used to run. So that way you can validate that everything is in fact correct, and it gives people peace of mind. And some people stop doing that after a while because they start to realize that the system is working for them. And in other cases, old habits die hard, and some of us just continue on doing the same thing over and over again, and we smile about it. So things like production input and output, sales demand for forecasting, and a new feature that Business Central has come out with in the fall of 2023 was an analysis tool, which is embedded in virtually every page. And this is something that I'm not going to talk about in detail here today, but definitely something that people have found very useful, and we can help you learn how to use that. Again, we talk about the integrity of your database, and one of the most important parts of business is your revenue. Another important part, in fact, one that people talk about all the time, is cost. Now, cash flow management is generally accepted to be about 30 to 45 days from cash to cash cycle. But how much of your cash is tied up in inventory that's ready to sell right now? And how much of your cash is tied up in your WIP or your throughput inventory right at this very moment? And how does that compare to your expected accounts receivable and your accounts payable? This may be information that you're currently not able to just go and it's there. But in Business Central, a lot of that information can be sent to things like dashboards. Quick reports can be pulled up so that you can see where's your financial position, where's your cash position right now. Talking about cost fluctuations of production output, for instance, you can't necessarily control your costs every step of the way, every day of the week. But if you're able to at least see that, during production, that there's a certain production run, that there was a high level of scrap, you can see that very quickly, then you can go and question that. And maybe that's happening right now, and you'll be able to go right out onto the shop floor and see what's going on. Is there a machine down? What happened before the machine went down? It started, producing all these unviable output. So now maintaining vendor cost lists for future comparisons and analysis, and not necessarily for materials only, but like how much is your process cost? How much is your subcontracting vendor charging you today for the value add function they're performing? And how much were they charging you last week or two months ago or a year ago? So if you're able to track your costs for your vendor, and not just what they are today, but what they have been, and then input forecasts so that you can figure out what are things going to cost you in 3 months or in 6 months. Tracking your production time, your expected time versus your actual time. Now that's important. You expect to be able to produce, 1 unit every minute. That's 60 units in an hour, but you're only getting a yield of 50. Well, what's going on there, right? And so Business Central can help provide this information of your expected versus actual. Maybe you need to adjust your expected. Maybe it's it's not realistic. On the other hand, maybe there's an issue and you need to change something on the shop floor. So you can track your production order statistics by production order. You can see the breakdown. You can see the expected cost of material used. You can see the expected cost of production, your setup time, your run time, your overhead. You can see fluctuations. Again, what's your actual cost of material that you used, including scrap or offcuts or seconds? What is your actual cost of production as recorded at the work center or the machine center by the operators? And also the calculation of the variance. And you can see if it's within your tolerance. So this allows you to analyze, identify, and take action very quickly. It may help you identify a constraint. How quickly right now, how quickly can you identify when a constraint appears? And, then you can go out to the shop floor, you can see what that constraint is. What about things like the bullwhip effect? All of a sudden you have all this demand coming in. Uh, how are you going to deal with that? Do you have enough raw material? Do you have enough production capacity? Are you looking at now, do we have to put overtime in? If you don't have the visibility on that right now, you could end up in a position where you have customers and sales staff screaming at you to basically, turn up the heat and get the production out. But you could have perhaps headed that sharp upswing. You could have headed it off if you had the visibility. What about preventing or minimizing unplanned downtime? And we talked about that earlier. Again, I won't harp on it, but do you know how much it costs being down? What is the cost of being down? In some cases, maybe it's okay to be down for a week because you have enough inventory. But maybe being down is shutting everything down. You're gonna look at your of course we're talking about costs and cash management. What about your asset management? Your machines and equipment. How old are your machines? How old is the equipment? How much does it cost to operate this equipment, these machines for production? What is your cost of maintenance and repair? And you can go out and probably find out what the cost to replace that machine is. But it's not just replacing a machine. We go back to that digital transformation. We talk about, technology being new. If you have a machine that's 20, 25 years old and you're buying a brand new machine, the technology today is going to be very different. So you're going to need to be able to factor in the cost of training the people that you have and training new people that you bring in. Maybe you need more people who have technological savvy for upkeeping those machines. So how can you use Business Central to integrate into your manufacturing business? Well, you need to have answers to some of these questions. Now, manufacturing companies need to have a complete supply chain solution. There's no point in getting, a partial solution or something that will only look at a particular area of your business. In order for supply chain to provide in a manufacturing business, supply chain needs to see everything from end to end. But you need to have conversations with your stakeholders. What do they think is missing from your current system? Well, what do they want to see? What would they like to see? You need to have conversations with the people, who are actually using the system now. Where do they spend most of their time, and is it productive? So, they're inputting information into your system, or they're, handwriting on a paper, on a clipboard somewhere, or on a whiteboard on a wall, or, shouting things out across a shop floor. They need to be able to have a more up-to-date method of inputting information and sharing information. So consider your actions and your inaction options for your short, your medium, and your long-term goals. Now, if you do nothing, things won't really stay the same. They're going to get worse because the world and the industries and technology is going to keep going forward, and you're just going to not be moving forward anymore. Now, the fact that you are here today listening to what we're saying here means that you want to do something better. So you decide what you need to do to update your ERP solution. You can consider the cost benefit of Business Central. What can be provided from standard functionality? And who can help you identify what can come from standard functionality? Who can help you identify where extensions may be required, or in some cases will be required? And what should these customizations or extensions look like, and how should they perform? What about future versions, for scalability and growth? Again, I asked you the question at the beginning, how has your company changed, in the past few years, past 5 years, or the past 10 years? Now, the best person or the best company or the best group of people to help you answer these questions is to choose an implementation partner that will help you identify these things. A company like Kwixand Solutions that will help you assess your needs and your wants, and even put weight on each of them to help you determine which are more important to you. Well, Kwixand can help you identify where standard functionality and extended functionality are required. And, we'll provide not only the implementation, but also support for the long term. We'll help with your continuous improvement and your scalability when you need us. And again, I go back to, training your people with new technology. You can spend all you want on an ERP, but make sure you spend the money on the training as well. A lot of people, a lot of companies will they'll buy the new tool, but they don't really know how to use it. So, set your organization up for success by engaging your implementation partner to train your people how to use the tool that you help put together. Kwixand can tailor the training to suit your organization as well. We're able to train on site or train remotely, however you choose. Now, many people, when they start working with a company, they get trained to process the transactions, but they don't really know the underlying connections. So I go back to where I was talking about the sales quote turning into a sales order, and down the line it gets to a posted sales invoice. There can be a disconnect between the person who's putting in the sales quote and the person who's in another department, and perhaps even in another building or another city or town, who's processing the sales invoice. Understanding the underlying connections of those transaction documents will be very helpful for all concerned. And being part of the build of your new ERP will help everybody to understand the current process that you're doing right now, and give insight to how the new ERP will function and how the customizations will function. Any ERP will be different in some way from one another. So understanding how a process might change, how your process might change, even slightly, will reduce the stress of that change, and it will reduce process errors. So again, we're talking about leveraging your ERP. Partner with a company that will help you answer these questions, that is going to learn and understand your company and your needs, is going to learn and understand your current system, and support you throughout the implementation process as you discover, new needs, and continue supporting you post-implementation to make the most of your investment. Now, I talked about before a couple of times about, how some companies, they don't really always understand every little nuance and step in their process, and how the implementation of an ERP is the best time to look and review and maybe change your SOPs. This is what I'm referring to when I talk about, when you discover things in your own system right now. So you want to invest the time and the resources into Business Central and be successful right from go live. And you want to know that right from go live, that Kwixand Solutions will already be working with your future state vision. Now, Business Central can provide some great benefits. Kwixand Solutions can help tie all that together. We've looked at, different use cases, and they show that basically, each company is different. Even if two companies are in the same industry or manufacture a similar product, they may have regulatory or industry standards in common, but business is not necessarily business as usual for each company. Companies have different needs and wants. They report to different shareholders and different kinds of ownership, and they've developed a business in their own way. Stakeholders have internally, they've developed their transactions to suit the vision and goals of the shareholders and ownership of the company. Companies are looking to obtain benefits that are specific to their vision and their plans. So before I cross the line into sales territory here, I'm going to connect you back with John Rio to give you some direction on how we at Kwixand can work together with you, and we can get the best solution for you with Business Central. John.
Thanks very much, Peter. That was great. And I'd just like to say thank you to everyone again for attending today. And as you can tell, we're pretty passionate about, from listening to Peter, we're pretty passionate about manufacturing and supply chain and really helping our clients to optimize their processes for the benefit of all. And we will be sending out a recording of this webinar so that you can share with any of your colleagues who may be interested in viewing it. And in that email, we'll also have a link to our industry pages. We've worked with a number of industries in the manufacturing space, and we'll also have a link to a free assessment. And the assessment is it's a one-day assessment. We go through a comprehensive discussion about your business, your processes, your potential use cases, who's involved, and what is your vision for success. After that, we dive deeper into the specifics, and then we come up with a customized plan tailored to your needs and to your company culture as well, because that's an important piece of the change management process. We then assemble our findings into a tangible, action-oriented plan. And then as part of that plan, deliverables would include a detailed implementation roadmap on how you can leverage an ERP in your company, and a detailed proposal geared towards long-term success and tailored to maximize your ROI. So yeah, as I said, our team has many years of experience helping manufacturers optimize their processes with tools like ERP, the Power Platform, which is Microsoft's low-code, no-code development platform, which you can easily do apps which can improve processes that maybe are not covered within the ERP, or automations that you want to do within Business Central or outside, and those kinds of things. So let's talk about how we can help you decrease costs, improve productivity, and help you thrive. Please send any additional questions, and we'll look forward to your feedback. Thanks again for joining us.